From pop culture to politics, this is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. And thank God we live in this greatest nation on God's green earth, because forever our problems here in the United States. You look around the world, we are very, very fortunate to be here. There is a great deal of information flooding the airwaves everywhere about scenes of chaos in Ceuta. Now, Ceuta is literally so remote and so small, it is a North African exclave that Spain has held for centuries. And now the news from Ceuta is splashed across networks and social media around the world. Juan Jesus Vivas, the head of Ceuta's government, said that nearly 36 migrants had died in attempting the crossing, and called the situation absolutely unsustainable in a territory with about 83,000 residents. Local authorities said they had no operation in place to feed or shelter these migrants who remained in Ceuta. Many said they hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days. So that was a fairly desperate situation. The New York Times reports that an estimated 50,000 to 60,000 Moroccan immigrants, mostly Moroccan, entered a small Spanish territory alongside Morocco on Friday. That's today, and yesterday, that according to Spanish authorities, although 48,300 had returned to Morocco by Friday afternoon. Now, these are mass movements of people. You have 48,300 people traveling from Ceuta back to Morocco, and that was this afternoon. They crossed. The crossing prompted an immediate backlash from far-right parties and individuals and leaders in Europe, and of course in the United States as well. The Drudge headlines concerning the, quote, invasion. It's actually a mass migration, a mass illegal migration. Spain invasion on Drudge, that's with an exclamation point. Migrants storm second enclave. Washington secretly encouraging. You're going to blame Washington for this? Oh, no, better. Their people are blaming Israel. And by the way, I have absolutely no idea what the basis of it is, but I know Israel well. And Israel has a very substantial Moroccan Jewish community, but they are people who are very prominent and successful in Israel and have been living in Israel for generations now, since the early days of the state, since the 1950s. And they're not migrating from Israel to Ceuta in Spain. That's not happening. Israel accused of stirring chaos, and Italy closes border. Now, again, the Italians and other Europeans are tremendously upset. Meanwhile, President Trump has his own reasons to be upset. Yes, he is opposed to illegal, unauthorized immigration for the United States or for any of our allies, but he has another problem. This is reported by The Hill. President Trump will assemble his cabinet at Camp David. That's outside of Washington. That's the presidential retreat that was originally put up by President Eisenhower several generations ago. President Trump will assemble his cabinet at Camp David today as he faces mounting struggles with his legislative agenda, a vexing war with Iran, and a war that is not anywhere close to over, and record low approval ratings with the midterm election less than 100 days away. All eyes in the political world will be on the meeting at Camp David, which was originally scheduled for May, but was postponed due to poor weather, with both houses of Congress out of town. The meeting is expected to be open to press and comes at a particularly perilous time for the president. Trump is coming off a few stinging defeats in the Senate as he has been forced to backtrack, at least for now, on his nomination of Todd Blanche, his former personal attorney, to become Attorney General for the whole country. This in the face of unyielding opposition from GOP lawmakers who he either primaried against or forced into retirement out of their seats because of his opposition. He's not having much better luck, writes The Hill, with advancing his legislative agenda, as Republicans have rebuffed his push to pass an election security bill, the so-called Save America Act, the security bill, or to cancel August recess to advance the latest reconciliation package. To cancel the recess would be a big deal because, of course, a lot of the members of Congress, both the Senate and the House, who are running for re-election, use that August recess to really kick off their campaigns and to get the advantage that incumbents usually enjoy over challengers. And then the Iran war is heating up again, with strikes this week on Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, three very important U.S. allies, threatening to pull in U.S. allies all across the region, with no sign of Iran easing its demands for control of the Strait of Hormuz, much less making major concessions on its nuclear program, which President Trump says he would require if we're actually going to have a ceasefire and some kind of agreement with the Iranians. The Hill is reporting that Saudi Arabia is now taking the lead role in forming an international military coalition to protect shipping in response to recent Houthi attacks on the Red Sea. That's very different from the Strait of Hormuz. The Saudi Defense Ministry said it met with nearly 60 countries to discuss the need to work together to secure shipping routes, and more than a dozen countries are joining the initiative. In other words, Saudi Arabia is getting the kind of cooperation with allies that the United States never really achieved concerning Iran. The more than a dozen countries are joining the initiative. Meanwhile, Trump has rolled out a new initiative all his own. It is called Freedom Haulers. Now, what are the Freedom Haulers? They are truck drivers who are designed to replace immigrant truck drivers with military veterans. The Department of Transportation will give eligible military veterans who are American the expedited commercial driver's licenses as part of the program. And meanwhile, CNN is reporting that President Trump said a historic agreement has been reached to secure the disarmament of the vicious, bloody terrorist group Hamas, a critical step in implementing a multi-phase peace plan to end the ongoing fighting in Gaza. We will get to that and all of the upsets and surprises all around the world and more, including within the Democratic Party, coming up in This Greatest Nation. And on the Michael Medved show, there is that big meeting today out in Camp David for President Trump and his cabinet. I assume he's going to be staying awake for it because there's enough new stuff to keep him from dozing off, which has been his habit at many of these other cabinet meetings. He's wide awake for the praise around the table when he goes to one cabinet secretary after another, talking about how great Trump is and how great the administration is. But today it's not such good news. There's a big, new, serious poll from the Associated Press and National Opinion Research Center, considered one of the most authoritative polls. And it shows that among all U.S. adults, the support for President Trump's handling of the Iran conflict is extremely negative and very low. It is now you have literally 3/4 of American adults who don't believe that the Iran war has been worth it, which is a provocative question. This is the way that the information, and it's not one poll, it's for virtually every poll, the way that that has been sending a message to President Trump and to the rest of our leadership on both sides of the aisle. The news for Donald Trump, here is CNN data guru Harry Enton, clip 18.
Where exactly is the floor for the president's polling? CNN's Harry Enton running the numbers for you on this one. What do these polls say about the president?
Yeah, is there a bottom? And to me, it does not appear that there is a bottom. Trump is heading towards an electoral black hole. I feel like this is like one of those magician's tricks, right? Where the floor just falls out beneath you. And that is exactly what is happening with President Trump. Kate off on the side laughing there. Trump's approval hits record term 2 lows all out this week. You know, you mentioned the CNN poll, 34%. You think that's all? How about AP North? 33%. You think that's all? How about Quinnipiac University? 32%. So you look at it and you get 3 different pollsters all saying that Trump is hitting term 2 lows this week. In fact, Quinnipiac, I believe that is an all-time low for him. And the CNN poll, as you were mentioning, Kate, that is tied for an all-time low for him. So is there a bottom? It does not appear to be, to me, that there is a bottom for President Trump.
Okay, what they report now is that the results, according to the Associated Press National Opinion Research Center poll, the results are a stark repudiation of the Republican president's approach to the conflict, which has dragged on far longer than he originally promised. About 2/3 of U.S. adults say the war with Iran, which began February 28th, has not been worthwhile. That, according to the new poll from Associated Press, that includes the vast majority of Democrats and independents, as well as about 37% who describe themselves as loyal Republicans but still think the handling of the war has been poor. The survey reinforces how unpopular the Iran war has become at home, a potential problem for congressional Republicans up for re-election in November who have been defending Trump's military actions. Just 28% of adults, so slightly more than a fourth, now approve of how Trump is handling Iran. That is a decline from 34%, which was already pathetic, but it's now down to 28%, 34% since last month. The support among black people, 12%. Among Latino people, 23%. Trump's overall approval rating is at 33%, slightly below where he stood at this point in his first term, and similar to where former President Joe Biden stood about 1.5 years into his presidency, which is a presidency where he eventually lost, of course, when inflation peaked. He lost because he was forced to withdraw. They put here in this account by Associated Press, Robert McCleary, a 52-year-old committed Republican from Sugar Grove, Ohio, is skeptical that the war could be brought to an easy conclusion, and he disapproves of Trump's handling of it. McClory voted for the president in 2016, but recalls that during the last election, Trump campaigned on not starting new wars in the Middle East. Quote, I don't have any trust in this administration at all, and to why they brought us into this war, why they're still putting our soldiers at risk again. The findings also indicate that most Americans' goals for the conflict may not be aligned with Trump, who has repeatedly said the war was launched to keep nuclear weapons out of Iran's hands. While about 2/3 of U.S. adults say it's extremely or very important to keep Iran from gaining a nuclear weapon, even more Americans say it's highly important for the U.S. to keep gasoline prices low or negotiate a permanent ceasefire with Iran. And here's a final punchline, which is only 2 in 10 U.S. adults want to continue military action in Iran, while about 3 in 10 say the U.S. should pause all military action and seek a renewed ceasefire through negotiations. About 2 out of 10 want to completely stop all military action in Iran, and roughly 1/4, they don't know what to say. They don't have anything to say. Speaking of not knowing what to say, President Trump wants to put tariffs on the Iranians, to hit them with tariffs, not with bombs. We will get to that coming up on the Medved show. But he is in favor of tariffs to make some money off the trade we do with Iran. But the reality is we don't trade at all with Iran. So what is the president exactly talking about? We will get to that and more coming up on the Medved show.
Join in your daily dose of debate.
I listen to you occasionally when I'm driving. It turns my stomach every time I do.
The Michael Medved Show.
And on the Michael Medved show, President Trump says that he is motivated by an attempt to posthumously support Senator Lindsey Graham, his longtime ally, or his most recent years an ally. And he basically wants to do what he perceives to be Lindsey Graham's will by imposing tariffs on Iran. Now, this is very difficult. President Trump explained this desire in the Oval Office. He spoke this way, clip 20.
Do you want the House to come back before August 31st to act on the Russia and Iran sanctions bill after?
Well, if it's necessary. I mean, it shouldn't be necessary, to be honest. But if it's necessary, I'd like to. Are you talking about the Lindsey Graham?
Yeah.
So I'd like them to add Iran as tariffs, not just as sanctions. I think it's important. That's what Lindsey wanted, because I heard that they have tariffs on Russia, but not on those 5 countries with having to do with Iran. I'd like to see tariffs on Iran. It would make it much stronger. So perhaps you're very good at this. You can maybe tell them. I think they should put in for Russia, but I think they should put in for Iran. And that's really what Lindsey wants.
Okay, the truth of the matter is that you can't put tariffs on people when you don't have trade with them. And right now, while we are at war, we're not engaged in trade with Iran. I mean, the main thing they would want to trade to us is something we don't need more of, which is oil. And the whole idea that we are going to now put on additional tariffs is the solution to everything. That is a unique position of Donald Trump. There's the other story that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, and yes, maybe it could be historic if in the unlikely event that this big new agreement that President Trump announced today, if that amounts to anything. because so many of the different agreements that he had, like the memo of understanding with the Iranian government, none of that has come true. And today he announced that there was a historic agreement to secure the disarmament of the terrorist group known as Hamas, that they had agreed, says President Trump, to disarming, which is, and it's true, if that's true, if they go through with that, that would be a very crucial step in moving toward a multi-phase peace plan to end the fighting in all of the Middle East. But a senior Hamas official, and there have been a lot of senior Hamas officials who've been killed, but one of the survivors told CNN that Hamas had agreed to the deal, but not until Israel upholds the Gaza truce. So what that means is, let's see what happens with this new alliance of some 60 countries that allegedly Saudi Arabia has spoken to try to unite to open up the Strait of Hormuz. That would be a good thing and a positive development. Speaking of good things and positive developments and the struggle between Hamas, which perpetrated that mass killing of 1,200 civilians and disrupting a rock concert, actually, which is part of what they were doing on October 6th of 2023. There was a confrontation, a rhetorical confrontation, not a battlefield confrontation, between an Iranian academic named Mohammad Morandi, and he was unleashing a fairly wild attack on Professor Alan Dershowitz, who for some 50 years taught at Harvard Law School. They were on together the Piers Morgan show, and the exchange sounded like this, clip 14.
After its people were raped, kidnapped, murdered on October 7th, would you at least admit that the Iranian regime has killed many, many, many thousands of people? Yes or no?
You know, we are not in 1935. We are not in 1939. We are in 1942. You are the Nazi regime that is carrying out a Holocaust in Gaza. You are the Nazi who is doing it as we speak. You're the evil monster. You say Israel is not a colonial regime? You're from Eastern Europe. You're European. All of those Ashkenazi Jews who are now running the country, they're from Eastern Europe. You came and slaughtered. I'm talking. I didn't interrupt you as you were ranting. The people who you support, the people who are running the country, they're Polish. They're Ukrainian. They're from Czechoslovakia. They're from Eastern Europe. You're not even Semite. You're the anti-Semite because you've been slaughtered. You won't let me talk. You are afraid. You're afraid because you know you have no argument. You have no leg to stand on.
Okay, that indicates that we are not about to see agreement between Alan Dershowitz, who, God bless him, is close to 90 years old now. And again, once you're called a Nazi, when somebody says you are a Nazi and says that to someone like Professor Dershowitz, who has family that was killed during the Holocaust, and virtually every Jewish person has at least some kind of cousin or second cousin or brother or father or parents, people who were killed in the Holocaust. And this idea that the people who run the Israeli government are Polish is ridiculous, because the plurality, not majority, but plurality of the Jewish population in Israel is not people from Eastern Europe. It's people who were thrown out of Arab countries at particularly Morocco, ironically, which is today so much in the news, but countries like Morocco and Yemen and Iran and Iraq, where they had flourishing Jewish communities that were driven away from their longtime homes for centuries and ended up making up that 800,000 immigration to the nation of Israel, where it wasn't illegal immigration. It wasn't unpopular. These are Jewish people who were welcomed to the new Jewish state. So what is going on with the migrants overrunning the Spanish outpost of Ceuta? What does that mean for the U.S. and for our European allies? We will get to that and more coming up on the Medved Show.
Listeners love Michael Medved.
I listen to you occasionally when I'm driving. It turns my stomach every time I do.
Lately, you've been sounding like a raving lunatic. You upset me so much. You never tell the truth.
I truly believe you're delusional.
You don't have a clue.
You're wrong again.
What's going on in your head? You are no good for the country. People like you who are a monster. Have you no shame?
The Michael Medved Show. The Michael Medved Show.
Listen.
Nationwide.
Listen.
And around the world at michaelmedved.com.
And listen.
And on the Michael Medved Show, there has been the report of attacks, political attacks, not physical attacks, around the world against the Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez. And he's one of the very few world leaders who takes on a deliberately leftist point of view. And he has now been criticized from the right in Spain, Germany, Italy, France, and the White House by President Trump, of course. And that's because under the leadership of Prime Minister Sanchez, Spanish officials have reported that nearly 50,000 migrants rushed the Spanish territory of Ceuta over the past 24 hours. This is reported by the Washington Post. They have either been swimming or climbing over fences into the small outpost with a population of just 83,000. It's only 11 miles from the Spanish mainland, and it's accessible via an hour-long ferry. At least 57 people have died in drowning or falling or crushing by crowds. 57 people have died in the mad dash to Ceuta, the Spanish officials say. As images of the crush spread quickly, says the Washington Post, via social media, Spain responded, ordering a military deployment on Thursday to restore order. That's yesterday. On Friday, Spain reinforced security and border fences, with Morocco deploying water cannons to push the migrants back. Spain is rapidly repatriating. Now, repatriating is a nice word for the harsh reality of arresting people and moving them somewhere else, getting them the heck out of your territory. Spain is rapidly repatriating the new arrivals. By Friday afternoon, around 3:30 p.m. local time, already 37,500 immigrants had been returned to Morocco through the Tarayal crossing, where the border between Ceuta and Morocco meets the sea. That according to the Spanish Interior Ministry. The sudden spike in irregular arrivals, otherwise known as illegal immigrants, one that is greater than the records seen during the region's 2015 migrant crisis fueled by the Syrian civil war. This all has sparked outrage across the European political spectrum. By comparison, only 2,698 immigrants had arrived in Ceuta and Melilla, which is another Spanish exclave, via land during the first 6 months of the year. That, according to the Interior Ministry. The rush raised speculation of a repeat of 2021, when tensions between Spain and Morocco led to the Moroccans dropping their border controls and allowing, even encouraging, 8,000 migrants into Ceuta in 2 days. All of this is complicated, and of course, President Trump has commented on it. And he said earlier this Friday, I saw Spain yesterday and I watched the catastrophe that took place. President Donald Trump said today, it was like an invasion of a country by hundreds of thousands of people. And that same thing is going to happen to us if the Republicans don't get elected, except worse, much bigger, much easier to get into, despite the fact that we have built thousands of miles of wall. In other words, spending all of those billions of dollars and building, it's not thousands of miles, but it is hundreds of miles of wall. All of that has done nothing to protect us against this kind of situation. Stephen Miller, of course, he has also spoken out on this issue. The White House Deputy Chief of Staff who helped shape Trump's anti-migration crackdown shared a video of migrants rushing Ceuta by sea and land, claiming Democrats would, quote, rejoice over the images of your home trampled and stolen by invaders. For Prime Minister Sanchez in Spain, he's already mixed and mired in a political crisis over corruption scandals within his inner circle, including his wife. The fallout, both global and domestic, was swift and growing. Spain has struggled to limit irregular migration to its North African enclaves from Morocco, exclaves actually, because they're not inside Morocco, they're outside it, whose territory surrounds Ceuta and Melilla. Some speculation centered on whether Morocco had eased enforcement following Sanchez's return from a recent trip to Morocco's adversarial neighbor, Algeria, another garden spot, an explanation discounted by both Spanish and Moroccan officials. The response across Europe was one of outrage, including from the mainstream political classes. French authorities said that they would strengthen border controls with Spain. And Ursula von der Leyen, who is the head of the European Commission, she is the president of the European Commission, she's German, obviously. The images coming from Ceuta are unacceptable, she said, and she demanded the swift return of those who arrived in Ceuta. We cannot allow anyone to come to our European Union without abiding by our rules. The strongest response came from a host of anti-immigrant parties across Europe who sought to capitalize on Spain's woes and portray that country, which is moving forward with a plan to legalize hundreds of thousands of undocumented migrants, to see that country as a liability and a magnet for irregular migration. The Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni called for the suspension of Spain from the Schengen Agreement that allows free movement among the 29 European countries, an agreement already under stress as several countries have reintroduced border checks. The government of Finland joined Italy in calling for Spain to be excluded from the agreement. Sanchez they say at the conclusion of this article, has emerged as a symbol of Europe's left, challenging Trump and criticizing the war in Iran, while also turning Spain into a counterpoint in the migrant debate by rolling out a broad legalization plan and adopting a more accepting tone, particularly regarding migrants arriving from Spanish-speaking countries in Latin America. In other words, Spain was offering themselves as an alternate destination from the United States of America. This is yet another problem. And it's like earlier this week, there had been a great discussion about the U.S. getting deeply involved into Mali, where there is domestic conflict. And the difficulty here of what is going on with Morocco is considered to be one of the more enlightened countries in the Middle East. And they have been participating, Morocco in the past, in the Abraham Accords, for instance. But somehow in the Middle East, for the people in these countries, these migrants are simply not able to make any of other countries, their own countries, seem to work for them. Meanwhile, there is more conflict on the campaign stage involving a very controversial flag bearer in this greatest nation on God's green earth.